Okay, in this relatively short tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can create a cutting tool which is able to cut shapes not in a straight way but in like a smoothed way. So if you have, let's say, a sphere is an object, and let's just go inside. So we see over here we have our polygon object. So if you use a slice or a cut, it's let's see, what is it? It's not cutting, no, it's slicing. No, clip, sorry, clipping tool. We're still having like this 3ds Max tools in my head. Okay, so this is a clipping tool, and as you can see, this tool is clearly something which allows you to clip, but it's always clipping in a very straight way. So what you can do is you can adjust the angle, what you see over here, but it's always just like a flat plane. Now this does have some advantages, and the advantage is the fact that with this whole system the clipping never fails. It's just like a perfect kind of boolean. Now the limitation is, of course, you can only do this in straight line. Now there's a way to overcome this and get something different out of that. And so like that you have some kind of a boolean, but which is like entirely stable and still very flexible in some cases. So the thing what we're going to do is first going to make it in such a way that we can clip using a curve. So I'm going to create a curve right here. Let's do it right over here. Always like to work with the nodes first. Curve. And so when we see this curve and with the sphere in the background, so we can create ourselves a curve, something like this. Going to convert this curve into a NURBS curve, and I'm going to change the whole thing I'm going to resample the whole thing. Resample. So like that we have like this resampled version of our surface. Now you can see more or less with the size of the polygons how much you need to resample. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so that you have like a bit more detail over here. Go increase the level of detail so that you have like a more accurate representation. And now we're going to make like this cutting surface. So I'm going to sweep a line over here. So I'm going to make the line y-centered, and I see that I haven't made myself a y-centered version yet. 0.5, and the points is going to be set to 4 NURBS, and let's sweep this around. And since this is a NURBS line, this is going to generate for us a NURBS object when we output this to a skinned shape. So as you can see, you can't see it over here yet, but normally you will see that there's just one primitive in here. You can see it by middle clicking. Okay, so we have now this one primitive. I need to make it big enough, of course, so that we can see that everything is being projected nicely on to our curves. And what we're going to do as well, because we're going to need that later, is we're going to create UVs for this. So I'm going to generate myself. We always will need UVs in order to make the whole system work, and that's something you will see later on. And those UVs also need to be non-overlapping. So those are two very important things to keep in mind. So take UV texture, and we're going to set the UV texture to points. Point texture, because we need to move it later on to somewhere else. So the thing what we have over here as well is we can see right here we have like uniform spline, average spline, rows and columns. I'm gonna take this. So if we check now with the material, you can use a quick shader. Where is it? The quick shader. UV quick shade. Then we quickly have like a representation of this. And so since that we used our example, we don't need to normalize or do anything with our texture. There is no stretching on the surface, so we can go exactly with this. So the thing what we're gonna do is over here with this sphere, and in this sphere we are going to make sure that we are going to project our sphere over here on the surface, and that we're gonna use also the UV attributes of that surface to reconstruct this whole sphere, but in this unfolded space. So we're gonna try and move, to put it this way, we're gonna try and move this sphere. We're gonna try to move this sphere into the space of the curve we have. So we're gonna change the whole shape and curvature of the whole thing. And so when it is moved into the space of this ribbon we have over here, then we can just make like a straight cut, and we can move the sphere back to its original position and with its original normals. So first of all, we need to store some of the information over here on the sphere. We need to store in some attributes. We're going to do that over here. Going to store some information right over here. So the information that we need is the following. We're gonna need the position. So I'm gonna call this pos, and we're gonna make this into a vector, and then typing $tx, because we need for each point $ty, $tz. So like that we've stored like all the point positions. So if we check this over here, you see right over here this creation. Oh, wrong naming. The naming should be over here, of course. So now we see with the pos x, pos y, pos c, which is just exactly a copy of what we see right here. We're gonna do something else as well. We're gonna store also the normal. We haven't generated the normal yet, but we can do that later. So again, a vector, $nx, $ny, and $nz. So this is the first thing. Now the following thing that we want to do is we want to get like the information over here on that surface. So we want to see, okay, how can we get everything we need, and for that we need like a projection which follows actually the normals of this surface that we have over here. We don't have any normals yet. Perhaps I can do a facet. Since this is a curve, it's not going to show you anything, but I'm not sure whether we need it. Post-compute normals, we don't see anything. Let's wait and see what we're gonna get if we do a projection, because normally a surface such as this, since it's a NURB surface, it's automatically going to get its normals being created over here. So let's try over here with a ray. Now, as you can see, right now our sphere is getting projected on this surface by using its own normals, but that's not really what we want. We want to find the shortest distance towards the surface, and luckily this is very easy. You can set over here minimum distance, and so once you do that, you see like this this whole sphere gets deformed, and it attaches itself to the surface. Now there are just a few problems, which is over here, because what we want to try and do in here is we want to create some points, not only the point groups, but we want to make sure that we have some point attributes, and right now we can't get those point attributes, so we need to get them some other way. Now luckily we can do something else. We can get the point intersection normal. So once you click this, you can see the normals are being generated, and we get the normals over here of the surface. Now we don't need to transform our points. We can just leave the sphere as it was. And so right now we do have points with exactly the normals we need in order to make like a proper projection of the geometry. So right now we can make like a second ray. And with this ray we are going to do one projection, which we can see right over here. And we're also gonna make like a group from this. We want to later on project these other points as well. So, but let's first focus on all the points that have been projected on the inner side. So what we want to get right now is we want to get like the point attributes, and especially the UV attributes. So let's check, did we get our UVs? We're getting UVs, and we're getting over here the UV values, as we can clearly see. Exactly what we need. Now what we also need is we need to get like the distance, the points intersection distance. So if you see over here, we find it right here and here, the distance, and we see how long those rays have been traveling, how long those points have been traveling for them in order to reach this point. So now we have three values we can use. We have like the distance traveled over here towards the surface, and we also have like where it's exactly being positioned on to the surface. A last thing that we need as well is we need to get a point group, create point group, because what we want to do right now is we want to get also the inverse information. Now again, we're not going to transform our points yet. We've stored some information, which we see over here. We have distance and UVs, but we want to get like the other UVs as well. So again, we're going to create like a new ray, connect it over here, and we will take the ray hit group to do something. Now the problem is the ray hit group, it's like this set of points, and we want to have exactly the opposite direction of that. So as you can see, we don't see any movement anymore. So let's just remove this. What we need to do is the following. If we go to a group, we need to get the points which didn't hit the surface yet. So what we're going to do right here is, I'm not going to enable this, I'm going to go to points, and we're going to go over here to combine, and let's call this group the inverse hit. Inverse hit is not going to be the ray hit group. And so right now you see all the points that weren't projected on the surface yet. So now we made like a clear selection of those. So now we can use this group, the reverse hit, to be transformed using negative rays. Now I was expecting it to change or move anyways. Okay, I had selected something different over here, so my viewing was just on the wrong note. So right now we have these two things. So what do we see? We see our distance is completely used over here, completely filled, so that's great, exactly what we need. We also see we have our UVs being used, but we still have like open parts, and the open parts are exactly those parts that we don't have right over here. So these are two that we still need to combine. Now one other thing that we need to do is with this distance, we need to make a difference. The distance that these points are traveling has to be like, for example, a negative distance, while this distance is going to be a positive distance. Otherwise, if you're going to use this, we don't have like geometry on both sides, but we're gonna have geometry on one side for both things at the same time, and like that we can't make like a clear cut. So how are we going to do this? We're going to go over here, create an attribute, and the attribute that we're going to create is being called dist as well. So right now you see the distance is just being rewritten, but we just make it the negative of the existent distance. And so as we can see right over here, we see all these negative values. Now if they're being combined with the new one, the new node, we see with negative values and we both have positive values. Now we need to combine also the UVs, and with the UVs it's a little bit trickier because the UVs here really overrides them completely if they don't have a heat. So what we're going to do right over here is we're going to use a point node, and in this point node we're going to use now our UV values that we've stored from both of these, and we're going to use over here our distance. So right here I'm going to write in the distance of the second input, because we also need to have the distance which was written down over here. So distance 2. So now we have like placement of the geometry in our distance, so we see like over here this strange deformation. The other thing we want to do is we want to have like the UV map. So U map, oh it says, oh map U, sorry, map U plus map U2. Almost sounds as if you're cursing somebody. Map V, map V2. So what we see over here is now we have our sphere being projected into this curve dimensions. So if we're gonna start moving over here, these points, you see this whole thing is reacting to what we're doing right over here. So it's just completely reactive. So the thing what we can do right now is we can use now a clip node, and with this clip node, if we put it into this direction, the direction, let's say, of Z, you can see how this sphere is completely cut now in a straight way. So this is always giving you a perfect clean cut. So the only thing you need to do right now is the following, and you can do it either using Vex or a point node. Now use a VOPSOP. Makes it way faster, and it's not that difficult to do either. So what we're gonna do in here is gonna get like our two attributes that we need. So import attribute. The first one is going to be the position, and the second one is going to be our normal. So now that we imported both of these attributes, the only thing we need to do is to just connect them right over here. So we see our position, and then we see our point normal, and which is not the proper name. It says normal X, Y, Z, and that normal has been destroyed completely. Okay. Why did this happen? As normal. Yeah, very simple. We didn't create one. So we go over here to face it. Let's make some normals over here. Post compute normals, and here we are. And so like that, your normals are also nicely interpolated over the different polygons. So it's gonna give you a different result than what you would have if you would generate the normals just directly after this. So if I'm adding a facet over here, you're gonna see on the edges, normally you're gonna see like a small change. Do we see a change? Oh no, I mean it needs to be over here because it's written down here. So here you see the change, and because of that we don't have this nice interpolation anymore. See, suddenly you're starting to see like this sharp edge, which you don't have if you just use the interpolation of that. So right now you just created a Boolean tool which can work with flat ribbons. So this is like a very flexible cutting tool. Now you can also figure out how to also create the interior side and so on. So if you just examine the principles we're doing over here, you can do something similar like that. Now you can also use, for example, a cube or a box, sorry. Why all of a sudden am I thinking in 3ds Max terms? So for example, let's take a cube like this, and we're gonna give we're gonna map this cube. We're gonna create like a UV map for this one. Material UV, where is it? UV unwrap. And while doing this UV unwrapping, we see all of this: layout, square, uniform, and so on and so forth. Let's have a look right over here. What kind of it's creating UVs in vertex mode. So we need to promote that later on, although no, it doesn't matter really, I think. Yes, it does matter. Let's have a look. I'm going to connect this with a null so that all of the outputs we have over here, come on, are directly connected to the sphere, so we can try it immediately using the cube, and let's see what the result is of that. And yes, it works this way as well. So as you can see, it makes it really into a very flexible tool. So even other shapes such as cubes can be used. So if you use like a transform node, you can see that you can really go all the way into different directions. But the problem starts to occur once you get like very close to those edges, and try to understand why this is happening. But the main problem is you really don't have any way to make like a clean cut of the polygons over there. It might be possible to perhaps fix it, creating like multiple polygons, especially if you have like edges which are very close. Then most likely there's a solution. But if not, then yeah, you just have to be sure not to get too close with edges. So that's a limitation you have with this system right now. Okay, so this concludes it for creating a Boolean, a flexible Boolean using a just a clip sub.